Pleasant day to each and everyone. At this moment, I will delve into remedial instruction in listening. But before that, let me introduce myself. I am Nurhani R. Gauman. In a classroom context, our teacher often asks this question: Class, are you listening? The question is, why listening? Why not hearing? We'll find out. Here is a quote from Daniel Barenboim. And in English, you have this wonderful difference between listening and hearing, and that you can hear without listening, and you can listen and not hear. In order to understand this code, let's differentiate the word hearing from the word listening. In hearing, it's physiological act, while in listening, it's psychological act. In hearing, it's passive bodily process, while in listening, it's an active mental process. In hearing, it's primary and continuous process, while in listening, it is secondary and temporary process. In hearing, it occurs on subconscious level, while in listening, it occurs on conscious level. In hearing, it begins before we listen, while in listening, it starts after hearing. Paying attention to hearing makes it a listening process, while paying no attention to listening makes it a hearing process. Now, in hearing, it's involuntary, while in listening, it is voluntary. So, using this method, we can actually differentiate these two. Now, in order to further understand this context, let's define listening. According to skillsyouneed.com, they defined listening as the ability to accurately receive and comprehend messages in a communication process, which means that you're not just merely listening to sounds, but when you listen, you concentrate. When you listen, you comprehend the message in order for you to gain the information correct. According to Manzano 2015, listening is the most neglected skills yet most used in communication process. Of course, we all know that the four macro skills is an essential skills that a student should acquire. But what happens if a student lacks listening comprehension? As a future educator, it's our job to design a remedial instruction in listening in order for our future students to enhance their listening comprehension. Now, there are factors affecting listening comprehension. Number one, we have internal factors as well as the external factors. Now, these factors affecting listening comprehension will further discussed by Ms. Makasindil.
So now let us talk about the factors that affecting the students' listening comprehension. So there are actually two factors that affect the students' listening comprehension. First, we have the internal factors, and second, we have the external factors. So let us talk more about the internal factors. Internal factors refers to the factors that affect the listening comprehension of the students, and these factors comes from the students themselves. Meaning, these factors are from the students. No other parties are involved in these factors. So that is why this is also known as learner based because they're based on the learners. So this includes the characteristic, language proficiency, memory, age, gender, and background knowledge of the students, as well as the aptitude, motivation, and psychological and physiological factors of the student. So for the first internal factor, we have here the problems and proficiency. So a student's language proficiency can significantly affect their listening comprehension. Why? Because if a student are not yet proficient with the language being used by the speaker, then they may not be able to understand what is being said or what is being communicated by the speaker. Second factor, we have here the vocabulary. A student's vocabulary knowledge can also affect their listening comprehension. Students who are unfamiliar with the terms being used by the speaker may find it difficult to follow what is being said. For example, the speaker uses the term photosynthesis without explaining what is photosynthesis. Then the students will not be able or may find it difficult to know what is really the concept being discussed by the speaker. Next factor, we have the poor background knowledge or the schema. So a student's prior knowledge of the topic being discussed can also affect their listening comprehension. If students is unfamiliar with the topic being discussed, then they may struggle to understand the spoken language. Next, we have the lack of motivation to listen. So we all know that motivation influences a student's willingness to engage in listening tasks. So if the student is interested with the topic, then they are most likely to listen. For example, a student is passionate about literature, then they may actively listen to a lecture about literature. Next factor, we have here the psychological factors. This includes the anxiety, stress, and confidence levels of the student that affects their listening comprehension. So if the students have high levels of anxiety, then they may find it difficult to focus on the speaker and may miss important information. So we also have other internal factors here like age, attention span, memory span, reaction, and sensitivity. As for the age, it can it can impact factors like attention span, making it difficult for them to listen actively for extended period. For example, a group of young children may struggle to focus during a lengthy session and might lose track of the narrative. Next, we have here the memory span. So, students who have difficulty remembering information may struggle with long form listening tasks, such as listening to a podcast that present multiple ideas or themes. Next, we have the attention and sensitivity. So, attention and reaction times are crucial for effective listening comprehension. Individuals who tend to be easily distracted may find it challenging to concentrate, resulting in poor listening comprehension. For example, a student who is listening to a lecture while distracted by their phones may miss key points and fail to understand the main idea being communicated by the speaker. So those are the internal factors that affect the student's listening comprehension.
Good day, everybody. I am Baino Jiva Marhum Manalao, and I will be continuing the discussion. So, from internal factors, let us now proceed to the external factors. External factors are mainly related to the type of language input and tasks and context in which listening occurs. So, therefore, external factors are things outside of the listener that affect how well they understand what they hear. These include the kind of language that they are listening to, the tasks they need to do while listening, and the situation in which they are listening. The first external factor is the speed of delivery and different accents of speakers. The pace with which someone speaks has a significant impact on comprehension. When speakers speak too quickly, listeners may struggle to digest the information in real time, resulting in lost words or sentences. Similarly, accents can be difficult to deal with, especially for students who are unfamiliar with differences in pronunciation and intonation. Well, we also have to remember that practice and exposure to varied accents can assist students in enhancing their ability to understand diverse speakers. Again, how fast someone talks and their accent can make it hard to understand them. If they talk too fast, you might miss some words. If they have an accent that you're not used to, it can be hard to understand them. So, for example, if someone from a different country speaks English quickly and with a strong accent, you will definitely might find it hard to understand them at first. But if you listen to people from that country more often, you'll get better at understanding them. The second external factor is the content and task of listening materials. The content of listening materials plays a crucial role in comprehension. Materials that are relevant to the learner's interests and experiences are generally easier to understand because they engage the learner's prior knowledge and motivation. So basically, what you listen to and what you need to do while listening can affect how well you understand. If the topic is interesting or familiar, it is easier to understand. Harder topics need better language skills. Also, if you have to do something active like answering questions, you'll understand better if you just listen without doing anything. For example, if you're listening to a story about the sport you like, let us say badminton, you'll understand it better than a story about a topic you don't know, like soccer. So if I'll be telling you a story about badminton, you'll understand it better than if I'll tell a story about soccer. And then if you have to answer questions about the story about badminton, you'll pay more attention and understand it more. Third, and the last external factor is context. Essential clues for comprehending spoken language are provided by context. This covers the linguistic context, the words and the phrases that surround utterance, as well as the situational context, which includes the location and timing of the communication. Well, context is the setting or situation in which something is said. It includes the words around what is being said and the situation where the conversation is happening. Understanding the context helps you guess what might be said next, figure out meanings, and clear up confusion. So, for example, if someone says it's cold in here and you are in a room with an open window, so you can guess that they might want the window closed because of the context, the open window. So because of that context, you will have a hint that that the person you are with wants the window closed. Understood? Okay. The second example is if a friend says it's getting late while you are studying together. And then remember that the context there, the time and the situation you're studying, and then it's late. It helps you understand that they might be hinting that it is time to finish up and go home. So that would be for the external factors affecting remedial class in listening.
Remedial instruction in listening is designed to help students who struggle with understanding spoken language by providing targeted activities that strengthen their listening skills. Three effective strategies for improving listening comprehensions are listening exercises, vocabulary building activities, and active listening activities or tasks. These activities help students focus on key details, expand their word knowledge, and then actively engage with what they hear and making listening a more effective learning experience. So to begin with the listening exercises, which train students to identify the main idea, recognize key details, and understand tone or intent in spoken language. These exercises help students filter important information and improve their comprehension. For example, a teacher might play a short audio clip, such as a conversation or a news report, and then ask students to answer questions like what is the main idea of the story, or who were the people speaking and what were they talking about. So, by regularly practicing these exercises, students become more confident in processing spoken language and understanding its meaning. So another important strategy is that we have the vocabulary building activities, which help students expand their word knowledge and make listening easier. So when students are unfamiliar with many words, they may struggle to follow conversation or lectures. So to address this, teacher can introduce new vocabulary before playing an audio recording. For example, before listening to a dialogue, student can learn 5 new words that will appear in the recording. And then they then read and discuss the meanings of these words, listen for them in the audio, and then use them in their own sentences afterward. So this method allows students to connect vocabulary with real life listening situations, improving their ability to recognize and then understand spoken words. So lastly, we have the active listening activities. Encourages students to engage with what they hear and engage with what they hear by taking notes, summarizing information, and then discussing key points. These activities train students to focus on important details and improve their ability to remember and analyze spoken content. For instance, students can listen to a podcast or a speech and then take notes on key ideas and then later summarize summarize the main points in their own words, so that they can also discuss what they heard with a partner or the class, which helps them to develop their critical thinking and communication skills. So by incorporating listening exercises, vocabulary building activities, and active listening tasks, educators can help students strengthen their listening comprehension skills. These strategies make listening a more interactive and engaging process, ultimately improving students' ability to understand spoken language in both academic and real world settings. And now let's have the overview of the factor affecting EFL, or English as a Foreign Language, learners' listening comprehension. The paper titled A Study of Factors Affecting EFL, or English as a Foreign Language, Learners' English Listening Comprehension and the Strategies for Improvement. The study highlights the importance of listening skills in learning English as a foreign language (EFL), as listening is a crucial part of communication and education. Yet it has been overlooked in language teaching. The authors emphasize that effective listening involves not just hearing words but also understanding their meaning, which requires active engagement from the listener. So the study identifies several factors that influence listening comprehension, such as the listener's ability to process spoken language, recognize different speech patterns, and understand the speaker's intentions. Moreover, the paper discusses various strategies to enhance listening skills. It suggests that listening lessons should be carefully planned, progressing from simple to complex tasks to match the learner's growing proficiency. Active participation is encouraged, as students should engage with the materials through writing and immediate feedback, which helps maintain their interest and motivation. The authors also stress the need for lessons to focus on teaching rather than testing, creating a supportive environment where mistakes are seen as part of the learning process. Additionally, the paper outlines general principles for teaching listening comprehension, such as emphasizing memory work to improve recall and concentration during listening tasks. So by addressing these factors and implementing effective teaching strategies, the study aims to improve English as a foreign language, or EFL, learning listening comprehension skills, which are essential for their overall language development and communicative competencies.